The nights were endless shadows, stretching across the walls like reminders of everything missing. Silence became the only companion, a silence that wasn't just in the room but deep inside, echoing against the hollowness of a heart that longed for warmth. The world outside moved fast, laughter spilling from corners, voices blending into stories of togetherness. Yet inside, there was nothing but stillness. Loneliness wasn't just being alone, it was feeling unseen, untouched, unremembered, as if the skin itself had forgotten what it meant to be alive. Every night carried the same ache. The bed was wide, but it might as well have been a sea of cold sheets, swallowing every dream before it could take shape. The body craved more than comfort. It craved fire, the gentle heat of someone's hand tracing invisible patterns, the unspoken intimacy that only touch could deliver. Desire lived like an untamed storm, circling beneath the ribs, heavy and suffocating, but with nowhere to go. Nights turned into years, and the hunger for something more than a fleeting distraction grew unbearable. The heart wasn't innocent. It knew what it wanted. Not a passing face or meaningless warmth, but something that burned through every layer. Body, soul, and everything in between. There was a yearning for raw connection, for a touch that wouldn't just graze skin, but would tear down the walls built around fragile hopes. The loneliness wasn't only about being untouched, it was about being untouched in ways that mattered, in ways that made every nerve come alive, in ways that whispered of forever. Dreams became dangerous because they offered glimpses of what reality refused to give. The imagined weight of strong arms, the soft heat of lips brushing the neck, the rhythm of bodies colliding in desperate tenderness. These dreams lingered long after sleep ended. Waking up was the cruelest part. It happened in a moment so small, yet it carried the weight of an entire lifetime. One touch. That was all it took for the silence of countless nights to crack wide open. It wasn't just skin meeting skin, it was fire waking in the veins, a sudden rush that spread faster than thought. Every nerve lit up, trembling under the spark of something too powerful to ignore. It wasn't just a touch, it was recognition, like the universe had finally remembered a promise it once made and had forgotten to deliver until now. The air thickened instantly, heavy with something unseen yet undeniable. That hand lingered, not forceful, not hesitant, but certain. The certainty alone made the world tilt, made the body lean into it, as if pulled by an invisible thread. A warmth spread through every hollow space inside, filling the emptiness that had been carved out by years of loneliness. It was as if the soul had been waiting, aching, begging, and finally the answer came in the form of that one undeniable moment. Time lost its shape. The room, the noise, the world outside, none of it mattered. The only truth was the electric current running between two bodies, the heat building like a storm that refused to stay quiet. That first brush of his hand on trembling skin awakened something buried, something raw and dangerous, desire not just for closeness, but for complete surrender. It wasn't about lust alone. It was about finally being seen, finally being touched in a way that spoke of both passion and promise. The heartbeat grew louder, pounding as if it wanted to escape the chest and leap into his palm. Breath caught in the throat, a mixture of fear and longing, because deep down there was an understanding. Nothing would be the same again. Once a soul tastes this kind of fire, it cannot go back to the cold silence it knew before. That touch was a doorway, a key, an invitation to a world. The nights that followed were no longer silent, no longer hollow, no longer cruel. They turned into secret worlds carved out of stolen hours, where passion and tenderness blended into something unexplainable. Each moment carried the weight of desire, yet it was never just about flesh alone. It was the way his breath lingered against the skin, the way his fingers traced lines as if memorizing every inch, the way the body melted into his with a trust that words could never capture. Desire was unspoken because it didn't need language. Eyes told the story, bodies completed it. Every glance carried fire, every touch ignited it further, every kiss burned deeper. There were no boundaries, no hesitations, no pretending. It was raw and bare, a truth too powerful to be hidden, yet too sacred to be shown to the world. These nights belonged only to the two hearts entwined, and in that secrecy, the bond grew stronger, unbreakable. Passion came like waves, relentless and consuming, pulling everything into its rhythm. The body knew his, responded to his, answered every unasked question, lips pressed together, soft at first, then hungry, desperate, as if each kiss was a promise not to let go. The heat between them was fire, but it never burned to destroy. It burned to fuse, to bind, to turn two bodies into one. Even in the fiercest moments, there was tenderness, the kind that reminded the heart it wasn't only about lust, but about love that grew deeper with every caress. Every night became a secret language, the arch of the back, the tremble of the breath, the tightening grip, the whispered sighs. All of it was conversation, all of it confession. Words would have broken the spell. Silence became the most honest vow. The walls of the room held their secrets, and within those walls, the universe itself seemed to pause, to bend, to witness a love too intimate to be shared with anyone else. It wasn't just desire. It was devotion, dressed as desire. When his body pressed close, when his arms wrapped tight, when passion blurred into tenderness, it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. Every secret night was another thread woven into a fabric of forever, and though the world outside remained unaware, inside, everything had changed. The soul was no longer empty. It was alive, ablaze, tethered to a love that felt eternal. Those unspoken nights were not temporary escapes. They were the foundation of something unshakable. With every stolen moment, with every breathless kiss, with every whisper pressed against the skin, the bond grew so strong it felt untouchable. These were not just nights of desire. They were nights that built forever. His presence carried a gravity that could not be escaped, a pull stronger than any force the heart had ever known. Just being near him changed the air itself, lighter, warmer, filled with an unshakable calm. The body no longer felt like a vessel of loneliness, because the weight of his nearness anchored everything that once drifted aimlessly. The world could rage outside, but one glance, one smile, one quiet breath beside him was enough to silence every storm inside. What once felt like endless emptiness began to heal in ways impossible to explain. The scars carved by silence and abandonment softened under his touch. A heart once fragile and fractured found strength in the steady rhythm of his closeness. There was no need to ask for reassurance, because his presence spoke louder than words. In every step, in every heartbeat, in every quiet moment, he was there, a living reminder that love had not been lost, only delayed until now. Nights no longer felt endless. His arms, wrapped tight around trembling shoulders, redefined what safety meant. His breath against the skin turned fears into fading whispers. His voice, low and steady, carried promises even when no words were spoken. Presence alone was enough to rebuild trust, to stitch together pieces that had been broken for too long. The soul, once scattered and restless, began to rest, to find its home in him. Desire was still there, fierce and consuming, but it deepened into something more, devotion. The fire that once burned wild now glowed steady, illuminating instead of destroying. Passion wasn't only in the way lips met or how bodies collided, it was in the way he stayed, the way he held, the way he showed up again and again. Presence became the purest intimacy, the one that didn't always demand touch, but still made the skin tingle, the heart race, the soul surrender. Every moment near him carried weight, Eva. And silence wasn't empty anymore. It became a language of its own, filled with comfort and belonging. To feel him so close was to feel whole again, as if the universe had finally given back everything it once stole. The brokenness that once defined every night faded, replaced by strength that came only from knowing someone was truly there. His nearness was not temporary. It was a promise that tomorrow and the day after and all the days to come would never again be faced alone. The power of his presence wasn't in grand gestures or loud declarations. It was in the quiet, the steady, the constant. And it was enough enough to heal, enough to anchor, enough to transform a shattered heart into something whole, alive, and unbreakable. Ordinary days began to feel extraordinary once his love seeped into every corner of life. Simple mornings, once dull and heavy, turned into sacred rituals of shared glances and unspoken warmth. Coffee tasted different when his smile hovered across the table. The sound of his laughter turned silence into music. Even the most ordinary moments, walking side by side, sharing quiet meals, lying beneath the weight of night, became painted with a brilliance that no one else could see but us. It wasn't just life anymore. It was a world we built together. Every touch became part of this new universe, not always wild or desperate, but soft, tender, purposeful. Passion wasn't something locked away in the bedroom. It bled into the way his hand brushed mine in crowded places, the way his lips pressed gently against my forehead when words weren't enough, the way his presence lingered in everything I did. The fire between us didn't fade. It simply found new ways to burn, wrapping around every act, every glance, every moment. Desire remained a constant, but devotion gave it shape. Nights of unspoken craving still carried the same intensity, but they were no longer built on loneliness or hunger. They were built on choice, on the joy of surrendering again and again. Bodies moved together like they were born to fit, every kiss reminding that this love was not fleeting, not fragile, but a foundation on which an entire life could rest. Even the way he whispered my name became a declaration of devotion, pulling me deeper into the world only we knew how to build. Together, we rewrote the meaning of time. Hours vanished when our bodies tangled in heat and tenderness. Days stretched endlessly when separated, yet shrank into seconds when spent wrapped in each other's orbit. Every season carried new layers of love. Spring blossoms felt like us discovering one another anew. Summer heat roared the fire of our passion. Autumn reminded of the comfort of his steady arms, and winter became less cruel because his warmth lit up the cold. The world we built wasn't loud or decorated with grand gestures. It lived in the small things, the way his hand found mine without searching, the way his laughter filled rooms meant for two, the way his love colored every corner of life with meaning. We didn't need the approval of the outside world. We didn't need anyone else to understand. What we shared was too sacred to be explained, too vast to be contained, too alive to ever fade. In this world, devotion and passion didn't compete. They danced together. And every day reminded me that this love wasn't just something to feel. It was something to live, to breathe, to become. Ordinary days no longer existed. What we had created was a universe where love ruled, unshakable and eternal. Love as powerful as ours was never meant to be easy. The world has a way of testing what the heart holds most dear, and ours was tested with distance. Cruel, suffocating distance that pulled him away while leaving me drowning in emptiness once more. His presence had become my anchor, my breath, my world, and when he was gone, the silence returned, sharper than before, cutting through every fragile seam of my heart. Nights grew longer again, but not like before. This time they were filled with memories that replayed on a loop, the curve of his smile, the warmth of his touch, the fire in his kiss. Every detail became both a comfort and a torment, because remembering only deepened the longing. Sleep no longer offered escape. Dreams became cruel reminders of what my arms could no longer hold. The body ached with need, but the soul ached even deeper, because desire without presence felt like a wound that refused to heal. Tears became constant companions, flowing without warning, breaking through whenever the weight of missing him became too heavy to bear. The heart feared what distance could do, feared that time apart would weaken the fire, feared that silence would steal what passion had built. Every unanswered message, every delayed call, every day without his arms wrapped tight felt like a dagger twisting deeper. Love this strong should have felt unshakable, yet fear crept in like poison, whispering doubts, sowing shadows where once only light existed. The body craved him, but it wasn't just about the hunger for his touch. It was about the way his presence had healed me, the way his love had turned loneliness into life. Without him, everything cracked. The world felt colorless again. Days blurred together. Nights became unbearable. The soul knew he was mine, but the mind feared losing him, feared that destiny would steal him away, feared that love this rare might nimkin, outsurvive the storms life throws. Yet even in the pain, even in the sleepless nights and trembling fears, devotion never left. The bond we had created wasn't weak, it was tested. And though the distance hurt more than anything I'd ever known, there was a truth that stayed unshaken. I loved him too deeply to let go. Fear didn't destroy me. It reminded me of how much he mattered, how much this love had changed me, how impossible life would be without him. Every tear became a prayer. Every ache became a vow. Distance may have pulled him away, but the fear of losing him only proved how unbreakable my love truly was. When his arms found me again, the world seemed to stop. All the nights of waiting, all the tears, all the fears that had torn me apart melted in that single moment of closeness. His embrace was not just comfort, it was resurrection. The body remembered instantly, every nerve lighting with fire, every breath trembling with release. But it was more than desire that rushed in. It was forgiveness, raw and overwhelming, flooding through every scar the distance had carved. The first kiss after the silence carried both pain and promise. Lips pressed together with urgency, like two hearts desperate to prove they had survived the storm. It wasn't gentle. It was hungry, desperate, a collision of everything unsaid, everything missed, everything feared. Tears mingled with passion, and for a moment it was impossible to know where sorrow ended and ecstasy began. His touch was the balm to wounds I thought might never heal, and the fire between us burned hotter for every night we had spent apart. Passion became our language of forgiveness. The way his hands held me, not just to claim but to reassure. The way his body pressed against mine, not just to satisfy but to anchor. Every kiss, every caress, every trembling gasp turned scars into vows, erasing doubts with desire, replacing fear with devotion. We didn't just make love. We rebuilt love piece by piece, with every breathless moment reminding us why neither time nor distance could ever tear us apart. The night of reunion felt endless, like time itself had surrendered. Shadows wrapped around us, but there was no darkness anymore, only the glow of fire reborn. Every inch of skin remembered him, every sigh called his name, every shiver testified to the truth. He was mine, I was his, and nothing in the universe could undo that truth. Passion didn't erase the pain, it transformed it. What once felt like cracks in the heart, you became seams stitched with unshakable love. And when the storm of passion finally calmed, we lay in silence that no longer hurt. His hand rested over my chest, feeling the rhythm of my heart, steady and strong beneath his touch. Words were no longer necessary, because the vow was already written in the way our bodies clung, in the way our souls refused to let go. The scars we carried became proof, not of weakness, but of survival. We had faced fear, endured longing, embraced pain, and still, love stood taller than all of it. That reunion was not just a return. It was a sealing, an eternal promise carved into the deepest parts of our beings. Forgiveness collided with passion, and in that collision, forever was born. Forever was no longer a dream, no longer a distant hope whispered into empty nights. Forever became the truth etched into every kiss, every breath, every moment surrendered to love that was both sensual and soulful. His touch was still fire, but it was no longer a flame that threatened to burn out. It was steady, endless, a warmth that promised to last beyond time, beyond trials, beyond destiny itself. To surrender to him was not to lose, but to gain everything. The body gave in with ease, melting into his, craving every caress, every whisper of lips on skin. Passion was not fleeting. It was a living, breathing force that wrapped itself around us every night, every day, in every stolen glance and every desperate embrace. Yet underneath the hunger lay devotion, the kind that fed not just flesh but spirit, binding us deeper with every heartbeat shared. The love we carried was no longer fragile, no longer shadowed by fear. It had been tested by distance, by silence, by aching nights of doubt, and it had survived. What survived could not be broken. What survived could only grow stronger. His presence was no longer just an anchor. It was a part of me, the missing piece I had waited for, the truth I had always known without ever speaking. Every moment together became sacred. Waking with his arms still holding me, falling asleep to the rhythm of his breath against my neck, feeling his heartbeat match mine as if they were designed to beat as one. These were the small eternities that made up forever. Passion didn't fade with time. It deepened, became richer, more consuming, because every touch carried the weight of everything we had endured. The soul surrendered just as much as the body. In his gaze lived a universe. In his touch lived salvation. In his love lived the proof that destiny was not stronger than what we built. Fate could have tried to tear us apart, but it failed. No storm, no silence, no fear could touch what was forged in fire and sealed in devotion. This was unbreakable forever love, the kind that doesn't just happen. It is fought for, bled for, cried for, and finally cherished with every ounce of being. To love him was not a choice anymore. It was the very air, the very heartbeat, the very reason the soul still burned with life. And in that surrender, in that raw and total giving of self, forever was not just promised, forever was lived.